Were born in 1901 through 1927? Then congratulations, you're part of the greatest generation. On today's episode, we dive deep into the GI generational history and how they changed the world we inherited today. And bitch, I know y'all may hate elders, but don't sleep on this gen, because they're the same ones who invented the color television. Like, that's truly iconic. On TikTok, this is a multi-part series, however on YouTube, it's the full episode, so check us out on our other social media for more entertainment deep dives. Who exactly are the GI generation? The greatest generation really looked at history and said, bet. They were born during the new century starting from 1901 through 1927. They had the ultimate locked-in mentality because life literally gave them zero chill. They survived the aftermath of World War I, then got hit with the Great Depression when jobs disappeared faster than a toupee in a hurricane. They stretched every dollar, fixed everything themselves instead of replacing it, made sure to instill safety nets for future dilemmas. They were constantly starved, which would end up popularizing a single loaf of bread to feed the whole family. Financial anxiety? Well, the GIs practically invented it as they are aware how instability can quickly turn into reality. The baddies, aka women, entered factories in record numbers, proving they could absolutely slay outside traditional household roles, while the male soldiers fought across Europe and the Pacific. After the war, they dealt with rationing, rebuilding economies, and the beginning of the Cold War. And babes, that's when the fear of nuclear conflict became a daily reality. Honestly, history kept crashing out on the GI generation, like it's no wonder they are a little unhinged. But they still managed to build neighborhoods, raise families, and create the modern middle class. Their coping mechanism was basically keep everything in regardless of the many traumas and repeat the cycle. When it came to the GI's pop culture, their playlist was absolutely stacked with big band, swing, jazz, and traditional music like Frank Sinatra, Bing Crosby, Glenn Miller, and Ella Fitzgerald. Oh, and Hollywood actors? Hollywood's golden age was also absolutely serving, with icons like Humphrey Bogart, Katharine Hepburn, Clark Gable, the motherfucking iconic Judy Garland becoming household names. Fashion? Men stayed dripped out in tailored suits, suspenders, polished shoes, and fedoras, while the baddies aka women rocked structured dresses, shoulder pads, victory rolls, red lipstick, and perfectly arched brows. Compared with previous generations like the Lost Gen, the Greatest Gen didn't just keep the status quo, like they low-key rewrote it. They helped transform the United States into a global superpower, expanded homeownership, embraced higher education through the GI Bill, and proved women could thrive in industries that had previously excluded them. They normalized teamwork, sacrifice, and civic responsibility on a huge rate, while laying the groundwork for the prosperity that later generations enjoyed. The Greatest Generation's pop culture. Are you part of the Greatest Generation? Well, it's those who were born from 1901 through 1927. Like right now, y'all are old as fuck, but let's travel back in time to the early 20th century. During their coming-of-age years, movie palaces were packed with people watching glamorous Hollywood stars, while radio became the center of family entertainment. Mind you, as they were coming of age, they started with silent films, then transitioned to talking pictures. Their blockbuster films were Gone with the Wind, The Wizard of Oz, Casablanca, and Disney's iconic Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, which became cultural landmarks. By the 1950s, television exploded in popularity, with families gathering to watch shows such as I Love Lucy, The Ed Sullivan Show, The Honeymooners, and The Lone Ranger. During that era, there were hardly any legit representation for people of color in films and television, so for those actors of color, it was not their golden age of Hollywood. But babes' music was just as transformative. Big band and swing was the shit thanks to legends like Glenn Miller, Benny Goodman, Duke Ellington, and Tommy Dorsey. Crooners such as Bing Crosby, Frank Sinatra, Perry Como, and Nat King Cole became household names. Jazz icons including Ella Fitzgerald, Louis Armstrong, and Billie Holiday reshaped American music. But soon, music would change drastically when many members of the Greatest Generation entered middle age. They witnessed the explosive rise of early rock and roll stars like Elvis's motherfucking Presley and Chuck Berry. And y'all, the GI generation were terrified by rock and roll, thinking the youths were crashing out and headed into complete chaos. The GIs did try to minimize the huge influence the rock and roll genre had by constant fear-mongering and censorship. But as we know now, that didn't work. The Greatest Generation's fashion trends. The Greatest Generation experienced one of the biggest fashion transformations in history. Modern fits like a casual t-shirts or skinny jeans were still decades ahead, but as children during the 1900s, 1910s, and early 1920s, the GIs wore formal modest clothing almost every day like it's giving the crown. And for girls, they commonly wore white cotton dresses with lace, bows, knee-high socks, and polished Mary Jane shoes, while boys dressed in knickers, sailor suits, suspenders, flat caps, and button-up shirts. Women's beauty emphasized long, natural hair, soft curls, and wide-brimmed hats. Inspired by actresses like Mary Pickford and Lillian Gish, as they entered their teenage years and young adulthood during the Roaring '20s, they defined the flapper era as they were filled with excess glamour. The flapper era introduced shorter dresses, dropped waists, fringe, Art Deco patterns, cloche hats, silk stockings, and T-strap heels. Women embraced bobbed hairstyles, finger waves, cupid's bow, lipstick, and smoky eyes. Men favored sharp three-piece suits, Oxford bags, tuxedos, and polished leather shoes. But bitch, when the Great Depression hit, fashion became dramatically more modern. Style icons like Louise Brooks, Clara Bow, Greta Garbo, and Jean Harlow defined beauty, while singers like Bing Crosby helped popularize men's relaxed yet polished style. And bitch, World War II brought fabric rationing into American life, resulting in practical clothing with sharp-ass fuck-structured shoulders, shorter skirts, military-inspired tailoring, and simple silhouettes. After the war, they weren't so pressed about rationing, so fashion exploded with luxury once again when the iconic Christian Dior introduced the famous new look featuring full skirts, tiny waists, and elegant femininity. He ate and left no crumbs. Men embraced broad-shouldered business suits, fedoras, and polished dress shoes. Red lipstick became the iconic beauty staple, while victory rolls, pin curls, and glamorous Hollywood waves dominated hairstyles. Movie stars including My Latina Queen Rita Hayworth, Lauren Bacall, Ingrid Bergman, Katharine Hepburn, and singers like Frank Sinatra heavily influenced. Everyday style, like no surprise there, like they are truly the motherfucking certified baddie. Public figures such as First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt also inspired polished, sophisticated fashion for women. Such an iconic bad bitch, I must say. Later fashion trends of the Greatest Generation. By the time the Greatest Generation reached middle age during the 50s through 70s, their style reflected maturity and classic elegance rather than rapidly changing youth trends. Women often wore tailored skirt suits, shirtwaist dresses, pearls, gloves for special occasions, and neatly styled short curled hairstyles. It was giving snatched baddie. While men favored conservative styles and neatly groomed hair. As GIs reached middle-aged, their fashionable influential figures were still the Princess Grace Kelly, Audrey Hepburn, Elizabeth Taylor, Doris Day. As for men, it was the James Dean, the King of Rock, Elvis Presley, Miles Davis, and the man with the most riz in old Hollywood, Marlon Brando. But bitch, probably the most iconic fashion duo were the young and handsome president, John F. Kennedy, and First Lady Jacqueline Kennedy, later known as Onassis. Like, yes bitch, that Jackie O. Like, she has had the fashion industry gagged for fucking decades. She's like the blueprint of sophisticated glamour. Today, the GI/greatest generation are remembered for graceful style, impeccable manners, and beauty standards that celebrated confidence, sophistication, and always looking your best. Their lasting influence reminds us that every generation builds on the one before it. And that's it for today's episode of The Greatest Generation. Up next, we will dive deep into the next group, which is the silent generation. It's those born in 1928 through 1945. This generation includes former President Joe Biden, the Beatles' Paul McCartney and Ringo Starr, Rita Moreno, Harrison Ford, Barbra Streisand, and Diana Ross. Stay tuned for your specific generation, as our series will eventually cover them all, whether you're a boomer, millennial, Gen Z, and Gen X, and even Gen Alpha. Comment below, what generation are you from?